Chapter 12 Remodeling. James found it hard not to laugh as George sprinted gracelessly through the rapeseed, scrawny limbs flailing about and his camouflage jacket billowing behind like a superhero's cape. They cut across 2 fields, clambered over a metal gate, and ended up on the verge of the main road that led from the motorway. There were empty cop cars, minibuses, and vans parked up every few metres. In places, they blocked the traffic down to a single lane, creating mini-jams for the fleeing protesters. "How many do you reckon there are?" James asked, awed by the scale of the police presence as he ran alongside Tom. "Couple of hundred cops and 70 or 80 vehicles, I'd guess. You need at least 2 officers for every arrest you plan to make." "You ever been nicked?" James asked. Tom smiled. 6 times. On marches, direct actions and stuff. You? This was one of those moments in an undercover mission where you have to make something up on the fly. "Nah," James said. "You been up in court?" "Been fined a couple of times for criminal damage. Nothing massive, but Viv got a 6-month suspended for trashing a butcher's shop." "Cool," James grinned, making a mental note to mention Tom and Viv's criminal history to Zara when they got back to the cottage. They'd reached a break in the hedgerows and a gravel path leading towards a dilapidated barn. George led them inside, passing through a large entrance whose decrepit doors had rotted off their hinges. About 15 Alliance members milled around, illuminated by sunbeams penetrating missing sections of the roof. They were mostly young, 2/3 male, and dressed in dark clothes and hoodies. Some had elaborate piercings and tattoos, but the majority were people you'd pass in the street without batting an eye. George hurried anxiously towards a woman holding a walkie-talkie and earned a tongue lashing for being late. James, Kyle, Tom and Viv mooched towards a man holding out balaclavas and disposable gloves. "Now we're finally all here," the walkie-talkie woman shouted to the crowd, glowering at George. "Put on your gloves and take 1 hammer and 1 spray canister. I don't want any heroics, so attack 1 or 2 police vehicles each and then disperse into the fields. Bear in mind that some police cars have video cameras installed and recording at all times, so wear your headgear until you're clear of the action. You can then abandon your mallets and sprayers, provided you're not dopey enough to get fingerprints on them, but gloves and balaclavas will pick up traces of DNA, so take them home and destroy them. Lastly, if any of you are arrested, do not speak to the police. Be civil, even if they provoke you, and ask to speak to a solicitor from Parker, Lane and Figgis. The Zebra Alliance will cover your legal costs, provided you don't cooperate with the police. Now, what's the name of your solicitors?" "Parker, Lane and Figgis," the crowd murmured back. "And don't forget it," walkie-talkie woman shouted. The crowd pulled on gloves and balaclavas before going outside and picking out hammers and pressurized bug sprays from the rear compartment of a Volvo estate car. Fortunately for James and Kyle, quite a few activists had chickened out, and there was equipment going spare. "What's in here?" Kyle asked Viv, as he hooked a cylinder of pale blue liquid over his shoulder. "Industrial strength paint stripper," Viv said. "Highly corrosive, highly flammable. Strips paint off metal in a flash. Also melts certain plastics and synthetic fabrics, including the ones they make car seat covers out of. Just make sure you don't get it on your skin." "Okay, people," walkie-talkie woman shouted. "I just received the go signal. The cops are all lined up in their riot gear, and our scout just spotted the monkey van turning off the motorway. Good luck, and remember the golden rule. When in doubt, run like hell." A couple of activists cheered, and Viv made a typically flamboyant warbling sound as activists headed away from the barn in all directions. James and Kyle jogged off behind Tom and Viv, but found George blocking their path. "I'll be speaking to the committee about you on Wednesday night," he said angrily, looking up at Viv. "You're a renegade, and I can only see your attitude leading to serious problems for the Alliance." Viv raised his hand, as if he was going to swat George around the head. "George, you're a tedious, gutless, pen-pushing little twit. I don't really care what you do, or what you say, so long as you stay out of my face." "We'll see if the committee feels the same way," George said arrogantly, before bolting out of Viv's way and tripping over himself in the process. "You want to watch out," Tom said to his brother as they set off again. "The committee love Georgie boy. You're going to get kicked out of the Alliance if you're not careful." "I'm an anarchist," Viv said dismissively. "I never should have joined anything with a committee in the first place." The four lads ran half a kilometre, staying behind the hedgerows until they reached a muddy farm entrance with 3 police vans and 2 cars parked up side by side. They'd cased it on the way over, so they knew there were no cops about. James felt a rush of excitement as they broke cover. "Viva la revolution!" Viv shouted as he swung madly at a police van with his hammer. James raced across to a BMW motorway cruiser and took off a door mirror with the first swipe, then ran around, knocking out the side windows. He took 3 swings at the windscreen, but failed to shatter the toughened glass. "Do the inside with your spray," Tom shouted, as he and Kyle trashed the next car along. James took the canister off his shoulder, poked the sprayer nozzle through a broken window, and soaked the interior before squirting the corrosive liquid all over the white bodywork. He could hear more activists smashing cars up and down the road as he watched the paint on his target car bubbling up into thousands of tiny blisters. He was planning a final squirt into the luggage compartment, but some kind of weird chemical reaction forced him back as the melting interior plastics sent choking grey fumes spewing out through the broken windows. As he backed off from the stench, a metallic boom erupted inside a van parked directly behind him, and a ball of flame blasted open the back doors. "Jesus!" James gasped, wrapping his arms over his face as he backed into Viv. "Isn't this heavenly?" Viv grinned. "What the hell was that?" James yelled back, as he wafted his hand in front of his face, trying to clear the smoke closing him down from all directions. Viv held out the answer in the form of a small cardboard tube. "Firecrackers," he explained, as he handed one to James. "Thought they might liven things up a bit." As James struggled with the acrid smoke in his eyes and tried to stem a coughing fit, he spotted a lone cop running down the grass verge towards them. "Get rid of it, James," Viv ordered. The truth dawned on James almost too late. Amidst the smoke and noise, he hadn't realised that the firecracker in his hand was a light. James flung it hard and it sailed over the cars, exploding in mid-air a few metres in front of the cop. "Oh, you nutter!" Viv screamed happily. "You threw it at the piggy!" "I just got rid of it," James said, squinting anxiously through the smoke and relieved to see that only the cop's pride, and possibly his Y-fronts, had been damaged. James had had a few run-ins with the police and wasn't exactly their biggest fan, but he drew the line at blowing them up. "Better get out of here, kid," Viv said, grabbing James's shirt and tugging him towards the fields. "They'll murder us if they catch us now." Kyle and Tom had already set off into the fields, after demolishing a custody van and 2 cars and abandoning their sprays and mallets the instant they'd heard the explosion inside the van. "Lose the gloves and headgear," Viv ordered, removing his own as they jogged across the open field. "You're the man, James! A bona fide crazy cracker after my own heart. A cop-killing lunatic!" James managed to half smile at Viv, but he'd just come within a few seconds of getting his fingers blown off and was seriously shaken up. Viv Carter was the kind of nutcase who was going to end up killing someone.